Good evening, colleagues. Sorry, I'm slightly late. Let's see. We've got Alder Cooper, we've got Alder Ferrara Santana, got a couple of friends who aren't on the committee. One more, I think, and we'll have quorum. Up here comes Alder Sabin. I'm going to give it, let's call it 2 minutes, and then we'll get started. I'm going to turn my camera off to go fill my water bottle, and upon my return, we'll get started. Okay, well, we have ourselves a quorum, and I will start the long process of reading the notice. All right, our recording has started. Board of Alders Notice New Haven. The Legislation Committee of the Board of Alders will meet on Tuesday, February 1st, 2022 at 6 o'clock p.m. via video conference at https://bit.ly/3FUL10S and by phone at 646-558-8656, webinar ID 980-3307-8282 to hear and act on the following items. 1, OR 2021-0032, ordinance amendment to the section 12.5 43.2 subsection C4 of the New Haven Code of Ordinances, adding as a section 4 specifying that building official is responsible for enforcing section 12.5 43.2 subsection C4 of the ordinance and ensuring compliance with the same. 2, OR-2021-0020, ordinance amendment to Article 14 of the Code of General Ordinances concerning residential rental business licenses and transparency of ownership. 3, LM 2021-0501, New Haven Affordable Housing Commission Report and Recommendations, October 2021. Per order, Honorable Charles Decker, Chair. Attest, Honorable Michael Smart, City Clerk. These items are on file and available in the office of the City Clerk, room 202 at 200 Orange Street, New Haven, Connecticut 06510. Since this meeting will be held using solely electronic equipment, participation by a quorum of members at the same physical location is prohibited unless that location is made open to the public. Any member of the public may request in writing a physical location and any electronic equipment necessary to attend the meeting in real time, no later than 24 hours prior to the meeting. Said person shall have the same opportunities to provide comment or otherwise participate in the meeting as would be afforded if the meeting were held in person, with the following exception. Under law, the committee is not required to adjourn or postpone the meeting if any person loses the ability to participate because of an interruption, failure, or degradation of any person's connection to the meeting by electronic equipment. For accommodations to view the meeting, please email publictestimony@newhavenct.gov or call 203-946-6483. For accessibility related accommodations, please call 203-946-7651 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY-TDD. Public comment / testimony may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhaven ct.gov before 2:00 p.m. on the day of the meeting. If you wish to present testimony at the meeting, you must register in advance at https://bit.ly/3FUL10S or by calling 203-946-6483 or emailing publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2:00 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Public can view the meeting at https://bit.ly/3FUL10S or listen by phone at 646-558-8656, webinar ID 980-3307-8282. The password to listen by phone only is 466-373-1353. And that is that. Welcome, colleagues. I'm glad to have you all here with us for this new term. We have some new members of the Legislation Committee, but I think everyone here is a veteran of the board at this point. So I think that we have a really exciting time ahead of us, and we have a really exciting meeting ahead of us tonight. So I will first start by calling the roll to establish our quorum. I'm going to do that in order that the committee is listed on the website. So give me 1 second to pull that up. So Decker is the chair, and I am here. We have Alder Cupo, who is our new vice chair. Alder Cupo, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Alder Ellen Cupo, Ward 8, and I am here.
Welcome, Alder Cupo. Alder Ferraro Santana.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Rosa Ferraro Santana, Ward 13. Thank you.
Welcome, Alder. Next, Alder Morrison.
Good evening, everyone. Alder Jeanette Morrison, Dixwell. Good evening. Thank you.
Good evening and welcome, Alder Morrison. Alder, I've lost my place here. Alder Marchand.
Adam Marchand, Alder of the 25th Ward, member of the committee. Thank you.
Welcome, sir. Alder Furlow.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. Richard Furlow, Ward 27.
Welcome, Alder Furlow. I feel like Alder Furlow moving down in the batting order is like bringing in a ringer, just a secret weapon here. And then we have Alder Sabin.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Alder Eli Sabin, representing Ward 7.
Welcome tonight, Alder Sabin, and welcome to the Legislation Committee as well. We are quite happy to have you on board. I also see and recognize Alder Salvatore, third officer, who is here with us, Alder Sarah Miller, Alder Steve Winter, and I see no other alders in the attendees list for now. I will recognize anyone else that comes in. Just as a reminder, folks who are not, who are alders but are not on this committee are welcome here on the panelist page, but should keep their cameras off. And alders who are on the committee should keep their cameras on, unless, of course, you need to step away for a time. So we have 3 items that we're going to hear tonight. I'm going to call the items in order, call for public testimony. We'll have discussion, and then if the committee so wishes, deliberations at the end. And let me get my legislative package back up here. My computer's being a little slow. Here we go. So let's just jump right into it. I'm going to call the first item, which is item 1, OR-2021-0032, ordinance amendments to the section 12.5, 43.2 subsection C4 of the New Haven Code Ordinances, adding as section 4, specifying that the building official is responsible for enforcing section 12.5, 43.2 subsection C4 of the ordinance and ensuring compliance with the same. And I believe that Alder DeCola is the maker of this item. So Alder DeCola, if you are ready, you can take it away.
Thank you, Chair Decker. My name is Sal DeCola. I live at 120 Townsend Avenue, New Haven, 06512. Yes, this is a clarification. When we put this in a few years back, I think about 5, the Disability Committee came to the CSEP and had issues with elevators. So when we did all this work, we left one part out. Who's the umpire? Because I've got a call from them 2 months ago about the city's kicking the can on this. LCI said it's not there. So basically, we're just putting this, that now the building department will make the call on the fines and enforcing the elevator when they're down. To our new colleagues and some that don't know, a lot of the small apartment buildings don't carry contracts with service groups like Otis and others. So they get pushed back on the line. But what happens is it takes a while. So when somebody that is handicapped, believe it or not, the fire department must come and get them downstairs so they could go to their doctor's appointment. And then we have to bring them back up. So again, we in the city are burdening the weight of taking care of our residents. So this is just to have somebody there to enforce the repairs of the elevator at a reasonable time. I know parts are hard, and just because they choose not to have a service contract does not mean that they get a free pass and taking 3 to 4 weeks to getting something fixed. So that's why we brought this back in, the request of the Disability Commission. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be more than glad to answer them.
Thank you, Alder DeCola. Do any members of this committee have any questions on this item? Alder Furlow, is that a hand? Yes, go ahead.
I had to find it. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Alder DeCola, for presenting this. And so I think I just want to bring it to the attention, though it's not directly related to the elevators, but in reading the section of handicap, and perhaps, Mr. Chair, this is something that this committee may want to look at a little later, but it says a person may not discriminate in going through. And I think that that term person should be defined. And it just seems that throughout our different departments and in various ordinances, there is not a cohesion with terms, and some even with practices. Some require, with the rooming houses and so forth. And so perhaps that is something that we should look at some point. I'm just sort of flagging it, that there should be some sort of definition for persons, especially as it pertains to our next item, where some of that language is clearly defined. So that's all I have, Mr. Chair. Thank you again, Alder DeCola, for this presentation.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. Yes, definitely pertinent to our next item as well. Just as a reminder for colleagues on the committee, if you want to raise your hand, either the virtual icon is fine, or also just doing it, on the screen also is fine. Whatever, I'll see you either way. There's not that many of you. Alder Marchand, you're up next.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Alder DeCola, for bringing this item and being so responsive to the Disability Commission and to the needs of residents across the city. I do remember an incident, I think it was in Ward 24 in Alder Hamilton's ward, where an elevator went out in a very large apartment building, and it was out for a long time. And there were disabled people up on that upper floor, and it was a hardship for them. And it was not easy for the fire department to send out a group of firefighters to help people get out. This is important. And it certainly is in alignment with our focus on affordable housing and good quality housing for our residents. The question I have for you, Alder DeCola, is I know you to be a man of due diligence, and I imagine that you had conversations with the building department about plans for how that city agency would deal with this and what the procedure would be. And so I'm wondering how that conversation went, and do you feel confident that the building official and his staff are going to be in a good position to do enforcement? Well,
I kind of dropped the ball. I didn't talk to Jim Terzio on this, but he's the one that enforces our codes. So that's why I put it there. And I will talk to him that if he is in concern over it, then when the budget season comes, we can have a deeper conversation in assisting him in going forward. So I'm sorry I didn't have a conversation when I was just focusing on he knows the ordinance. He's a building inspector. He understands mechanics. He understands time schedules on certain things and being respectful to property owners too. But I will follow up after this, that we move this. So by the second reading, I will have an answer for us. And I apologize for missing this one. So thank you for bringing that to my attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder DeCola. And my next question is about, I wasn't able to find, and I'm sure it's right in front of my nose, what the actual fines are for infractions of this particular part of the ordinance. It's probably the same as for other infractions. Do you know off the top of your head what that amount is?
No, I do not know. And that's another thing I want to look into, if that, do we need to put tiers on this? If it goes longer, do we add more? So again, this is something that will be in our budget season to assist in the building department and maybe making the fine stronger to get property owners to be more responsive to our residents.
Great. I look forward to revisiting that issue this spring when we're looking at that page of proposed fines and fees. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Marchand. Do other members of the committee have questions for the maker of this item, item 1? Alder Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Alder DeCola, for bringing this to the committee. I'm sort of following up on Alder Marchand's question. I'm wondering if you know who, if anyone, has been enforcing this this policy currently. Potentially no one, but I was just wondering if
nobody's really been enforcing it. It was brought to my attention by the Disabled Commission, and because I was part of making this with my colleague Adam Marchand back in the day on CSEP, that they reached out to me, and I said I made a promise that we would move forward to help them. They were just, nobody wanted to make the call, and it's a tough decision because property owners choose not to have a service contract, and that's their choice. But they don't have a choice of letting a disabled person be stuck in their building. That's not acceptable in my book. And the cries, not the cries, the concerns of this group was really passionate that these family or these individuals should not be stranded. And again, the fire department has to put an apparatus out of service to get somebody out of a building. God forbid if something happened and that truck now is doing what it shouldn't be doing. So it's a bunch of puzzle pieces here. So thank you for your input.
Thank you for that explanation. I'm also wondering, when you say enforcement of the section of the ordinance, does that mean basically that means sending a letter to the property owner and then issuing a fine?
Correct. And like I said, and then if Corp Counsel, but be honest, when they came to me, they said, well, they went to LCI. LCI had said it's not them, and then the building department said it wasn't them. It was like a tennis match, and so we're just going to define it. And it's just something that we should be aware about when we do make certain laws, that we put somebody that will enforce the law, a department head or somebody. We make laws and sometimes it falls in a gray area, and this one did.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Sabin. Alder Kupo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just one clarifying question. I think this is similar to my colleague from the 7th Ward's question about the word person. Just wondering, the building official, would it make sense for that to be the building official of the city of New Haven rather than just simply the building official? I'll admit that my first pass over it, I thought that perhaps pertained to the building official of said building. Understanding that this is both, we're talking about buildings and potential homes, but I wanted to kind of put that out there and see if that made sense.
Yes, it does. And if we have to tweak it, that's why we're discussing it right now. And I have 2 meetings to get this all clarified. So I'll be more than glad to do it. This is important to our residents, and I made a promise. So I will follow through to make sure each question is answered, and we'll move forward on this. So I'll have the clarifications that we need by February 22nd.
Thank you, Alder DeCola. And thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all.
Thank you, Alder Cupo. Any further questions from members of this committee for Alder DeCola? Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to note for the record that the building official was invited to this meeting and did not respond. Thank you.
Thank you. I have just received that information as well. So yes, thank you for putting that in the public record. Further questions for Alder DeCola? Seeing none, thank you, Alder DeCola. Please stick around for a minute and I will ask if there are any members of the public who wish to be heard on this item. If so, please put up your virtual hand or otherwise make yourself known to our staff. Any members of the public who wish to be heard on item 1? While we're waiting, I've just seen we have one written testimony submitted. Nope, that's the wrong one. Give me a moment here. It is testimony from Billy Huang, who's the chairperson of the Committee on Disabilities, who has submitted testimony in favor of this amendment, this ordinance change. Okay, I see Gretchen Knopf has joined us in the room. So if you are ready, you can come turn your camera on, please, and go right ahead.
I don't see a place where I can turn on my camera.
Oh dear. Well, you can just you can go ahead with your testimony. We can hear you loud and clear. Oh, except now you're back on mute.
I'll get it right one of these days.
You got it. We can see you, we can hear you.
I actually didn't attend the meeting so that I could speak. I just provide staff support to the Commission on Disabilities, including assisting them in getting the testimony to you today. I've been working for the city for about 9 months, and this has been an issue that we've been discussing for the whole time, and there's quite a history on it. And I know that it's important for individuals with disabilities to be able to have equal use and enjoyment of their homes. And when you disrupt that by not having elevators that work, you not only create a dangerous situation, but you also create one where that's an inequity as far as what they're able to do versus an individual who doesn't have a physical disability. So
thank you for that. Before you continue, can you just give us your name and address for the record, please?
Sorry, my name is Gretchen Knopf, and my address is actually 228 Mile Creek Road in Old Lyme, Connecticut.
Thank you. You can continue if you have additional testimony.
No, that was about it, but I'm happy to answer questions if people have them, if I can.
Great. Thank you very much. Do any members of the committee have any questions? Seeing none, we thank you for your testimony. Have a great evening.
Thank you, you too.
Are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard on this item, item 1? Asking for a second time, are there any other members of the public who wish to be heard on this item? And a third time, any members of the public who wish to be heard on item 1? Seeing none, thank you again, Alder DeCola, and we may come back to this at the end of the meeting.
Thank you, Toa.
All right, let's move on to item 2, which is OR 2021-0020 ordinance amendment to Article 14 of the Code of General Ordinances concerning residential rental business licenses and transparency of ownership. I see we have Director Samuel. Director Samuel, if you want to give us your name and address for the record, and then you can dive on in.
I'm sorry, could you also admit my interim director, Mark Wilson, on, please?
Misty, if we could get Mr. Wilson in as well, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Arlavia Samuel, the Executive Director for Livable City Initiative. My address is 95 Anthony Street, New Haven, Connecticut. And we are on here in regards to, this is, oh gosh, the natural persons, where we're at requesting, sit down. Sorry, an ordinance for where everyone, the landlords and the property owners who register their properties with us as a LLC for our residential licensing program would actually have to put the name of a natural person, a person who can be called, a phone number, an address, and a name somewhere in the area. So in case of emergencies, displacements, issues, items, we can have a direct person to reach out to that we can contact without going through different numbers, voice machines, messages, and going on and not being able to get a person, which leads to a lot of times us having to actually relocate someone or make emergency repairs and then put a lien on a property and try to get our money back down the line when we can figure out who it is. But it's just a mechanism to help us to operate more efficiently. And I asked Mark to come on because he could actually dive into more specific details into why it would make such a big difference to the Housing Code Division to actually have this in place.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Wilson, that sounds like it would be very useful for the committee if you could just give your name and address for the record before you begin.
Sure, Mark Wilson, 15 Bracewood Road, Waterbury, Connecticut, and I'm the acting deputy director for Housing Code Enforcement with Livable City Initiative. Let me just give you a scenario. Over the past weekend with the snowstorm, we had quite a few emergencies in the city of New Haven. At that time, trying to locate a physical or a natural person at 2 a.m. when you don't have any contact information is very difficult. As Executive Director Olivia Samuel said, at times like this, we have to make, split-second decisions on what to do with the tenant, maybe to relocate them, put them in a hotel when we can't reach a landlord. This may have to be done even if we do contact a landlord, but at least being able to speak with someone to kind of address the issues that are ongoing, it makes it much easier for us. When we have to send out an order or we have to send out at times a violation, being able to send it to someone or having a physical person that we know is receiving this order saves us a lot of times. Many times an LLC will list as its agent another LLC. That LLC will then list as an agent another LLC. And this can go on and on. So it becomes very time consuming and for our staff to have to dig to try to find an individual or a physical person that we can actually contact and have a conversation, although it may not be a pleasant conversation, but someone to have a conversation with. So to sum it up, it would help LCI out tremendously, not only the residential rental business licensing, code enforcement, Section 8, but for as a whole, it would be very beneficial to have someone that we could actually reach out to.
Great, thank you, Acting Deputy Director Wilson. Before we continue, I'd like to recognize Alder Honda Smith from the 30th Ward, who has joined us this evening. Welcome, Alder Smith. I see a couple of my colleagues have questions, so I will recognize Alder Ferraro Santana, followed by Alder Furlow.
Yes, good evening. One of the questions that I have is, I work a lot with LLCs and corporations and LLPs and what have you, and every one of them has an operating agreement. And 9 times out of 10, you can ask them for it, and it will give you who the underlying person is, the individual that you would need to contact, because they're basically responsible. They can acquire money, sign deals, or whatever it is they need to do. So if that would help, maybe when they're doing their business license, have them also send you or provide you with an operating agreement, which would give you who the individuals are under the underlying LLC. And even if it's another LLC, they would still have underlying individuals because they have to sign for something. When working at a bank, when we deal with LLCs, we need signers. And the signers are the ones on the operating agreement. So we don't deal with just the LLC, we deal with the underlying signer who has the approval to do it. So that's a suggestion that I'm offering. That would also help. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. I just wrote that suggestion down to look further into putting it into practice.
All set, Alder? Okay. Alder Furlow, who will be followed by Alder Morrison.
Good evening, Director Samuel, and good evening, Acting Director Wilson. Good to see both of you. I have a question. I'm just wondering, I didn't see in our attendees anyone from Corp Counsel, but I'm just wondering if you looked at best practices from other surrounding cities in regards to this. And I'm also just wondering the legality of requiring a corporation or LLC to provide their name. I have several corporations, and the reason why you do that is to protect your name against any type of liability. So I'm just wondering if we have an opinion, or if you have any sort of opinion from Corp Counsel, or any sort of best practices from other cities. I think this is a good idea, but I'm just wondering the legality of some of this.
Attorney Pinto, he been a part of the entire process. I'm not sure why he's not on tonight, but he went through the process and checked everything out to make sure that it was legal. Where we're not looking to hold the specific person. We just need a contact person, like a managing member or a partner, like a contact name, something to go along with the LLC. Like I have an LLC, but I'm also listed as the managing member in case someone needs to be contacted. Like you can't just contact the name of the LLC. There needs to be a person. And that's what we're asking for, someone that we can reach out to talk to when we need to.
Yep, so you're not talking about the actual agent who's responsible for the registration of the LLC. And in that case, you're talking about, well, as you said, a natural person. So then I guess my second question would be, so then the fine would go to who? If it's a corporation or LLC, would you still put the fine in the name of the LLC, or would it go in the name of the natural person?
The LLC is the owner, so it would go on, the way it's been doing is it would go in the name of the LLC and name the managing members or partners if there are any listed.
Do we have any that are not LLCs, because the rules for LLCs are different than corporations? So do we have any that are actual corporations or INC incorporated rather than LLCs?
Not to my knowledge. We typically have either a person who's listing himself as the owner, or when it's more than one, usually a LLC, which is usually the address in the LLC.
Okay, Mr. Chair, I may have some more questions, but thank you for this time. Thank you, directors.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alder Furlow. I actually have a follow-up to that question, but I will first recognize my two colleagues, Alder Morrison, who will be followed by Alder Sabin.
Thank you. So my question, it kind of follows with Alder Furlow's question in regards to like your plan. So if this ordinance is passed, this change is passed, what is your plan of action in regards to gathering the information? What kind of timeline are we talking? And the whole fee component, like failure to provide provide a contact person. Is, as far as the fees are concerned, are we going to look at possibly a tiered system as talked about in the last ordinance? So that's my overall questions regarding this.
Good evening, Alder. Thank you for that. Right now, we're looking to scrub the whole system right now because we want to make sure that the information for every single owner for every property is actually accurate. So as we come upon the renewals and the new applications, currently we'll be asking, if this goes through, we'll be asking for that natural person and making sure the correct information is in. And as the renewals come up and as the new applications come in over the 1 to 3 year period, because depending upon how good or bad their inspections when they either get re-inspected, the renewals 1, 2, or 3 years. So it is tiered. It's not like we wouldn't be doing a blanket everybody right now in the next year. It would be as the renewals come up, but we're scrubbing the system at the same time to make sure that we have as accurate information as possible for everyone in there.
So if this is passed, the system generally will be cleaned by 2024, 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. By 2025, you should have natural contacts for every person, along with updated information regarding each one of these properties.
Yes, that is correct.
And so where would a fee kick in? It's almost, I'm trying to, because as we know, a lot of these LLCs and folks, they're slick, they'll get around giving you the information, and then, when we want to call on them, no contact information. And, usually the way that you wake people up is when you hit the pocket. So so are we going to wait? We can't wait 3 years, right? I guess each year, as if year 1, this group is renewed, they may be on a system, and if they did not provide that information, maybe that's when the fee. I'm just trying to figure out this fee thing, because if we don't put a real bite to this is not going to be worth the paper that is written on. And so we want to make sure that we're really getting what we need, because as we know, I live in the area where there's people where they seem like they can't find nobody. And I don't understand, because I know when I got my mortgages over the years,
yes,
my name, address, firstborn, social, everything else is on every document. You will find Jeanette, but it seems like they can't find these people. So I'm just trying to figure out how can we move this along instead of just having us do this ordinance and then it kind of sit.
I totally agree with you. And as a part of, I know it seems like it's a long time saying for 3 years, but for the applicant, like I said, for the renewals and applications coming in, we'll be currently doing it. But in addition, I'm working on something different from this, but a marketing social media plan, which is putting us out there more into the public eye where everyone will know what's going on, everything in LCI. And with that, hopefully there's going to be a platform to let people know you need to contact us. We're updating landlord information. Please contact us, give us your current information, and reach out to us and trying to find a way to actually make that available with our current system online. So there are other things in play that I'm also trying to put with it so it has some teeth to it. I don't want to just do something that's going to sit there just to say it was done. Like, I want it to actually be something that's going to be effective.
Okay. All right, great. Okay.
If I could add to that too, if I think if the ordinance is passed, then you're going to get a lot of landlords that are going to willingly, I know that sounds a little funny, but I think some will come forward if the ordinance is passed. They'll give us the information we need. And we would hope that they would cooperate in that fashion and give us the information we need. But of course, we need an ordinance in order to kind of push that.
Okay, great. Another tool for your tool belt, right? Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. I recognize Alder Sabin, followed by Alder Marchand.
Thanks, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here, Director Samuel and Acting Director Wilson. I was wondering, so in the whereas section of the ordinance that was submitted to us, it says that there are 1,999 registered properties in the LCI program in 21-22, and that there were 1,042 inspections completed during the year. And I was wondering what the gap is between those numbers, whether this ordinance is in some way intended to try to close that gap.
Thank you. Good evening. I would love to say that that gap is basically totally dependent upon that, but it's not. A large part of that gap was with COVID, and there were a lot of re-inspections and people out and figuring out how to safely conduct the inspections, and people not wanting us to come into the unit. So that had a lot to do with the gap. That was the bigger part of the gap, more so than having a contact number.
Okay, and that's helpful. And do you know what the gap was in years prior to COVID, or do you have any sort of estimate of how many more inspections you'd be able to do under this ordinance?
I don't. I can get you those numbers as far as the years prior for how many were completed. I do know there was a drop off, but that was basically the reasoning. I'm not going to attribute that to this ordinance we're asking for.
Yeah, of course. No, that makes sense.
That will make a difference, but I don't think it's not that tremendous of a difference where we have over half the landlords, we don't know who they are. That's not the case.
Right. Okay. Okay, that's helpful. Through the chair, it would be helpful to, I think, get some numbers on what our inspections were over past years prior to the pandemic, if that's possible.
It is.
So
I also was wondering whether, and I don't want to expose any holes in the system, but I was wondering, just for our information, whether there are any, if you see any other issues that we might have even after we pass this ordinance with trying to get in touch with landlords. Are there any other issues that you think should be on our radar with addressing these issues in your experience?
I'm sure there may be, but I've also begun meeting independently with the owners, more so the owners with the higher number of properties in the city, and trying to formulate a better relationship with them where we have a better understanding of each other, what's expected from them, and how we can help them to be more effective. And so far, it seems like it's going to be a good thing, and I'm going to continue that, not just with the bigger landlords, but the smaller landlords as well. So hopefully that's going to improve our operations as well.
Great, that makes sense. That's all for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
thank you, Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I want to thank Director Samuel and Acting Director Wilson for being here this evening. I wanted my colleagues to know, as you may have seen in the packet, this item did go before the City Plan Commission. And we had a good discussion in that meeting, and it was very clear that the commission felt strongly that the issue this ordinance seeks to address is very important and needs to be addressed and addressed successfully. I can also say, as an alder who's been in office now for 10 years, that I've gotten plenty of complaints from residents about the upkeep or lack thereof of properties owned by distant concerns, and the frustration that I've experienced and neighborhood specialists have experienced holding someone accountable for those violations has been substantial. So I just want to, on the record, commend the city staff for taking this on. The question that we had at the commission, which I'll repeat tonight, is, do we think this will work? Property owners, not all of them, but some of them are litigious and will look for a way to defeat the ordinance. And so I know, Director Samuel, you made reference to Attorney Pinto saying that it was legal. One of the questions that the commission had for him was, has the city looked at other municipalities in other jurisdictions for, have they taken these kinds of actions, and have those approaches survived legal challenge, and have they actually worked? I'm not saying that we need to have conclusive evidence of that before we try it, but if we know more about it, that would be helpful. And so, so that's the question. And my intention is, for this to work. And if there's something we need to do even before adopting the ordinance that would make it even more likely to be successful, then we would like to know that. So I guess my question is about, have you looked at other cities and towns and other jurisdictions? Have they taken similar kinds of actions to try to pin down the real people behind these LLCs, and has it actually produced the desired result? Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Good evening, and thank you, Alder. Thank you for some good suggestions there. And no, I have not looked at other municipalities. Actually, when I came, this was before I assumed this position, this was already in the play. And I did not look at other municipalities. I was just looking at ways that we could put it into play and perfect it along with other measures, because single-handedly it's not going to make that big a difference without the other measures going alongside it.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think it'd be good to make sure this question gets to the Corporation Counsel's office with attention to Attorney Pinto. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Noted. Thank you, Alder Marchand. Before I recognize Alder Farrar Santana, I'll just quickly ask my question, which is a follow-up to Alder Furlow's line of questioning. And I think this might be in the materials you submitted, but I just wanted to double check that this is constructed in such a way that the natural person in question is somebody who actually has decision-making authority regarding the LLC, like whether there's a hierarchy of first it's the managing partner or the general partner, or just how are you conceptualizing that?
Our main concern is having a person like, say if a landlord lives in Florida, lives in New York, somewhere out of state, and we have a fire emergency or a water leak or sewer leak in housing, and we need to relocate somebody, or is there a reason we need to get into another unit or something. If they have a maintenance manager or someone in town, someone that we can call that can give us access or that can attend to the emergency, that's what we need. It's not so much that we have to have the name and identity of the owner of the LLC, but we need a responsible individual that we can communicate with, who can make decisions, who has money, who can go and get in the units, who can assist the residents, make repairs, if it's needed a relocation, who can do those things on a whim.
Thank you for that answer.
Have to be. I'm sorry. Thank you.
As my understanding of the problem is currently now is less that it's completely impossible to find, a human being, but that it takes quite a bit of staff time, resources, energy to do so. So I understand that it might be somewhat less important whether it's like, the person all the way at the top of the, but a real person who's actually responsive. So thank you for that answer. Alder Farrar Santana, you can go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Decker, and thank you very much for being here, Director Samuel and Mr. Wilson. As you know, I have a legal background, so naturally, I'm going to say it is legal because you can request a certificate from the state in which the LLC was formed. That takes 2 minutes on the secretary's website. It's not a hard thing to do. You know who the managing member is. And if you don't have a person who you can identify, it doesn't take a lot of man hours. You can do it in 15 minutes. I've done it countless times. I can't even, and if you can't get it, an attorney can request it for a fee of $25, which you can then pass on to the entity, the LLC. So there are many different ways that you can do this. So, and I know that you know this, Director Samuel, because you know who a managing member is, seeing that you already have an LLC. And I've been around the block many times and I know how to get the information that we need, because sometimes you need to do it. But I understand what you're saying, that if they're not complying of giving you an individual who is local, who is in charge of operating these homes and repairing them, you do need someone. But if you can get in contact with the entity that or person at the entity, you can get that information. and that should be readily available to you. He should be able to provide you with the name and the phone number. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Before I recognize Alder Furlow, I see Alder Carmen Rodriguez has joined us in the attendees list. Misty, if you would like to bring Alder Rodriguez in, that might be good. I will recognize Alder Furlow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate what my colleague from the 13th Ward has said. I just want to add on that I'm sure our colleague is just offering a suggestion, as this board and this committee is not authorized to give any legal advice. And so I just wanted to say that in the record. We appreciate her comments. We want to make sure, for the record, that it's not legal advice that she's giving, as this is a committee and we have a corp counsel to provide those things. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I interject, Mr. Chair?
You
It
may.
wasn't meant as a legal opinion because I am not an attorney. I'm just talking about my experience of dealing with businesses over 35 years. So I just wanted to express my value. Thank you.
Thank you, Alder. Do any other members of the committee have questions for the LCI directors? Alder Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just following up on my colleagues' questions, it seems like there's maybe a question about whether we're trying to have a contact for emergency repairs, or whether we're trying to have a contact that we would want to contact for fines or other issues. And I'm wondering whether there should be some space made for in the licensing requirements for landlords to name someone who should be contacted for emergency repairs. You know, I personally have been in an apartment where the heat was turned off on a weekend and was not able to contact the landlord. And it would have been very helpful for us to have on file with the city a person who we knew was responsible for answering that call. And it seems like if we're requiring someone who is at the top of the LLC to be on file as a natural person, that's not necessarily the person who we would want to contact in an emergency. That could just be the person who is financially responsible for the property. But so maybe the strategy is that if we contact them, they can get in touch with an emergency person. But I'm interested in your thoughts about that issue.
Good evening. Thank you. I totally agree with you there. I actually, about 3 weeks ago, had a conversation with my residential licensing program manager to edit the online application, to add a line for them to add a property manager or a maintenance manager contact and phone number for those purposes. So it'll be a part of the applications going forward.
And I think that having a maintenance man, it helps, but as Director Samuels brought out before, we need somebody that can also make a decision as to relocating someone, which requires some financial backing. Many times a maintenance man is not going to want to make that decision. So we need someone that has a little bit of juice that can make a decision like that.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. Seems like we need both, and seems like you're making sure that happens. So appreciate that explanation.
All set, Alder Sabin. Great. Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just remembered another issue that came up in the City Plan Commission meeting, which was one of our commission members, who is an attorney, was pointing out that there may be legal entities that don't have partners, and it may have a different configuration of leadership that the wording of the ordinance hadn't particularly contemplated. And so one of Attorney Pinto's pieces of homework coming out of the commission meeting was just to double check the language around which entities needed to disclose themselves, to make sure that we weren't inadvertently creating a loophole where there was a legal entity that had a different accountability structure that we didn't actually account for, that they would say, well, we don't have partners, so we don't need to give you names. And so it may be that he did that work and he thinks the language is fine, but I think it would be good for him to communicate to this committee perhaps by correspondence that he's done that work and everything's fine, or make a technical amendment suggestion for us going into the second meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder. That sounds like a good suggestion to me. Do any other members of this committee have questions for the directors? Seeing none, I will ask if there are any members of the public who wish to be heard on this item, item 2. For a second time, are there any members of the public who wish to be heard on item 2? And for a third time, any members of the public who wish to be heard on item 2? I don't see anybody in the attendees list who seems to be raising their hand. So with that, I thank you both, Director Samuel, Acting Director Wilson. Thanks for very thorough discussion. We'll catch you on the other side. And we will now move on to the third item, which is item 3, LM-2021-0501, New Haven Affordable Housing Commission Report and Recommendations, October 2021. I see various Affordable Housing Commission folks in the attendees, so I imagine they'll be joining us shortly. We have Ms. Jarrett with us, and Ms. Du Bois-Walton. So whoever is going to give the presentation can give your name and address for the record and dive on in.
Okay, I was going to introduce Shansia, but Shansia, you can dive in.
Good night. My name is Shansia Jarrett, and my address is 350 Canner Street.
Thank you very much. You can, if you have a presentation, you can go ahead.
We should also introduce Karen Du Bois-Walton as well. She's here with us, and she's one of the commissioners of the Affordable Housing Task Force.
Good
Dr.
evening,
Karen
everybody.
Dubois. Oh, sorry.
Good
Hi,
evening. Good to see you all. Karen Du Bois-Walton, 360 Orange Street. And I also submitted written testimony to the email address.
Thank you. And I am in receipt of that written testimony, certainly as well. So thank you for submitting that. So this committee received the recommendations of the Affordable Housing Commission that were transmitted in October. Do any of you all have a presentation or anything that you would like to say about that report?
Yes. Olivia, do you have the presentation, or would you like me to share it?
Either one of us can bring it up. Can we share? I don't have screen sharing privilege.
Let's see if I have the power to do that. I don't think I do. I think staff will have to. There we go.
Okay, can you see it, Shantia?
I'm not.
Can you?
Yeah,
can you see-
can you go to page 1? Yeah, can you go to page 1, the top piece, page 1? Thank you.
It's just a picture.
Yes, thank you. The Affordable Housing Task Commission completed its report on November of 2021. Can you go to the slide 2, please? The structure of the report contains an in-depth analysis of the progress of the work we did from April 2021 all the way until November of 2021. within our work, we were very intentional before introducing our topics to have both scholarly or expertise input before each and every recommendation in which we created. And we felt that was a great way for community members to both learn more about the concerns of affordable housing and to also get the opinions of experts, the public, and various community advocates. That was something that we were very intentional about. Out of our meetings, in addition to that, we also, in our appendix, have examples of resources of some of the experts we use and some of the community advocates and New Haven related ordinances that we use to create informed opinions, along with state and federal legislations. Can you please turn to page slide 3? Our first recommendation pertains to actually fill the remaining vacant seats of the Affordable Housing Commission. One of the big things that we learned that employment was deeply connected to affordable housing in terms of people qualifying for apartments, being more aware of New Haven's median MIA in terms of what HUD actually says and what is the reality for our residents, and being able to not necessarily fill that gap, but to respond to that gap in the best means way. So we advocated for someone who has a strong understanding of the employment rates in New Haven. And we also expressed interest in someone who was familiar with public health concerns as it related to housing. And then we also request that the Board of Alders consider these recommendations and actually make appointments within a reasonable time for the commission. Slide 4, please. Our second recommendation had to do with the creation of a registry, a below market rental units. We realized that although affordable housing was such a common theme and New Haven had numerous upcoming developments, people still had difficulties in accessing these affordable units. For example, the strongest concern we had were particularly people who were not receiving any means of rental subsidies. So our teachers, even our nurses, our immediate labor force workers, especially our first responders during the pandemic, had difficulties in accessing affordable units, although they were working. So we thought it would be best that not only for individual residents, but also for social agencies as well and housing advocates to actually have a place where they can go to see listings of affordable units throughout New Haven. And we looked at various municipalities before making this recommendation, such as I believe that is the last page of the report, but we looked at towns in California, Stamford, and even Cambridge, Massachusetts. And one of the ways in which we selected the towns to consider, we looked at median MIAs, and we also looked at the population sizes. And we also even considered what are the big industries within this town that's attracting so many people to live there. And we realized that for a city like New Haven, where we have so many different transitions, one of the good things for us was to actually have a portal that was user-friendly and accessible to the public. And we also have various recommendations of how to actually finance something like that and to work towards that process, and especially having housing navigators to be a part of that journey. May I ask you to go to slide 5, please? In addition to creating the BRM, we also realized that homeownership in New Haven city was significantly lower than our neighboring municipalities. And we thought that it would be best for the city to continue supporting affordable home ownership programs, to use the remaining funds of CARES or any other federal funding to initiate, to further support LCI's down payment and closing assistance program, and to possibly even increase the program's funding to help families. And we also encourage many of our officials to have those conversations with foundations and even banks to see what are some ways that we can reconcile relationships that possibly had disenfranchised communities who were actually obstructed from securing mortgages historically. And hopefully out of that dialogue, we can create some type of financing program that offers a lower mortgage interest rates. And we also thought about establishing a housing fund supported by contributions of in lieu fees for developers who opt out of affordable housing options as well. And to ensure a wide spectrum of affordable ownership options and to actually recruit affordable home developers. New Haven is very strong in the rental market in terms of developments, but what would happen to us, especially to our tax base, if we allowed teachers and other public workers who were interested in purchasing a home to keep New Haven as a desired location? Slide 6, please. As we continue to deal with the eviction moratorium and also foreclosures, especially those caused by the pandemic, we thought it was very important for the city to petition the state and the federal government to continue funding eviction and legal and foreclosure legal resources. The Castle program and Unite CT have done a great job in terms of getting people connected and actually preventing foreclosures. And we want that work to continue happening, and especially to support the work of New Haven's legal aid that has been a resource for thousands of families throughout the years as it relates to evictions. And then we also thought about partnering with the Connecticut's Bar Association to continue lobbying the state and the federal government when that time comes for the renewal of funds. So we have really thought about this and had the expertise of Erin Kimple and sharing the legal concerns about evictions and foreclosures throughout the state, and particularly in New Haven as well. The 7th and last final slide. And lastly, the Affordable Housing Commission did recommend further research on the impact of IZ. We already know that IZ has passed, and the Affordable Housing Commission is currently reviewing the IZ manual. So one of the things we really thought about is, has the city ever required, the Board of Elders should require the city to quantify the dollar amount of incentives awarded to developers to understand the monetary benefits of IZ and its financial impact on New Haven's taxpayers and its residents. We felt that would give us a more informed understanding of IZ, and to also research the disparate impact of IZ based on race and also the socioeconomic standards. For example, towns in North Carolina, particularly Raleigh and Durham, had various concerns related to IZ. And what they realized is that because IZ was implemented in silo, particularly with the developers, it was very difficult for the community to participate in that. So they had heightened rates of displacement. So one of the concerns that one could raise, or the Affordable Housing Commission could raise, is that hopefully as IZ continues to be implemented, that the Affordable Housing Commission, along with the city and community members, can also be a part of that conversation, whether it's through public testimony or through the role of the Affordable Housing Task Force as well. And the Housing Task Force did make a recommendation to increase the affordability component. And as noted, it's already been passed. So I thank you, alders, for listening to this presentation.
Thank you very much. That was a good summary of some of what we received, which of course was much longer what we received. I will ask if any members of the committee have any questions for any of the folks from the Affordable Housing Commission. I recognize Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My guest has left my house. My mask is off. Thank goodness. I wanted to just offer a bit of information for Ms. Jarrett and the other members of the commission who are here with us. Tomorrow evening, there's a special meeting of the City Plan Commission where there will be a discussion and a public hearing of the proposed manual, which is regulations being drafted by city staff that accompany or follow up on the ordinance amendment that we passed some weeks ago. And so anybody in this group or who's watching this meeting who has an interest in the details of administering the new ordinance, they should go to the city plan website and get the connection information for the public hearing tomorrow, which will begin at 6 and will be on Zoom. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Marchand, for that important update.
Thank you.
I recognize now Alder Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you both for being here tonight and presenting. I think that the idea of creating a below market rent registry is a really good one and would have a very big positive impact on the community and our residents. I had a question on page 11 of the report, and it's 95 in our package. It says that the Stamford below market rent program includes over 250 affordable units, it says. And that seems like a pretty small number of units. And I was wondering if the idea was that if New Haven was to do something similar, whether it would just be rental units that are deed restricted affordable, or whether it would make sense to in some way try to capture or create a list that would included other affordable housing options in the city, since obviously we have over, I think, 50,000 housing units in the city, so 250 isn't that many. So I was wondering what we might be able to do to make sure that we got a bigger number of available affordable housing options on any below market rent registry that we created.
Sure. So Stanford's 250 are what were actually accurate at that, like available at that time, but they have had more. And once the unit is filled, like they take it away. But one of the things to consider is the administrative responsibility of actually collecting all that data and to first assess and see if New Haven currently has an active list at the city in terms of deeds that are actually restricted. And one of the ways in which we can possibly work towards that is make it a requirement, right? In terms of if you want to build and you want affordability to be a component, you have to list your unit with the city's BRM. And not only do you have to do that, you have to have a leasing contact information as well. So that persons interested can reach out to the leasing departments of those developers. And we can also invite them to update their units. And this could be new developments and old developments as well. So that would be a good place to start. Gradually, we want to get a really comprehensive number. But the whole idea also behind this administratively is to gather data. New Haven is always saying that it needs affordable units. It needs 25,000. well, how are we going to know if we actually made that goal? And how are we going to know if these units are actually affordable? So I think it's a great tool to measure as well.
And if I can add, thank you, Alders, for taking the time to really dig into our report. The report, as you know, represents the first 6 months of work here, and is an exciting start to what is a much longer term set of ideas and recommendations that we'll be bringing to you. The below market registry as a place to start is meant to capture not just subsidized units through federal or state subsidy or local subsidy, but also as a way of capturing some naturally occurring affordable units as well, for which there's really no good documentation currently. And it's meant to recognize the fact that it is a very difficult process to be a renter in search of a unit and trying to navigate and to build an infrastructure, and to have this conversation with you at the same time that you will also shortly be having lots of deliberation around next set of expenditures through the ARP money, we think is really perfect timing to think about where investments get made into things that provide some infrastructure that requires upfront capital investment of something that will pay off on the long run, also around the way we'll be able to support access to quality, affordable rental housing. And I think fits nicely with the piece that Director Sammy presented earlier, also around trying how we get our handle on what's happening in our market. So I encourage you to think about these, one as our initial set of recommendations, and that there'll be more to come, and also within the context of this opportunity to make some investments right now in some things that will support the infrastructure for the system and grow the amount of affordable rental and homeownership opportunities that we have in the city, as we all work toward that goal of 25,000 new opportunities are what's needed. Doesn't mean we're building 25,000 units, but it's 25,000 affordable housing opportunities is what's needed in our community right now.
Thank you. That was a very helpful explanation, and definitely seems like something that should be a priority for this board and the city. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Saban. And I agree that both the opportunity presented and the urgency come through very clearly in the report, as well as in your written submitted testimony. So thank you for that. Do other members of this committee have questions for the presenters? Any other members of the committee? Seeing none, I will ask, are there members of the public who wish to be heard on this item 3, the report of the first 6 months of the Affordable Housing Commission? Asking a second time, are there members of the public who wish to be heard on this item? I'll ask a third time, and I'll even expand it a little bit. Are there any members of the public who should be heard on any of the 3 items that we've heard tonight? Seeing none, I will entertain comments or motions. Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we close the public portion of this meeting.
New message from Jeremy Hyde.
Second.
There has been a motion to close the public hearing, which has been seconded. Discussion on the motion. Seeing none, I will call the roll in just a moment, as soon as I get my roll list up. Alder Cupo.
Yes.
Alder Ferraro Santana.
Yes.
Alder Morrison.
Yes.
Alder Marchand.
Yes.
Alder Furlow.
Yes.
Alder Saban.
Yes.
I vote yes as well. The public portion of this meeting is closed. Thank you to everybody who came and presented and gave testimony. I will entertain further motions, notions, ideas. Alder Marchand.
Mr. Chair, I move item 1.
Second.
Item 1 has been moved and seconded. Discussion on item 1. Alder Marchand.
Mr. Chair, I want to speak in favor of the item. I commend Alder DeCola for his being so responsive to the needs of members of our community who are put in harm's way when they lose the ability to gain ingress or egress to their house. I want to thank him for making good on his promise to the Disability Commission to work on this item. And I trust that he will do the required follow-up between now and the second reading to verify those details that we asked him about that need a little bit more follow through. And I encourage colleagues to vote favorably on this item. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Marchand. Further discussion on item 1. I will just echo Alderman Marchand's comments. And as chair of the committee, I of course know Alder DeCola to be a diligent public servant, and greatly thank him for bringing this forward, and also have the utmost trust that those last little bits will be ironed out well in advance of our second reading with the full board. So any further discussion on item 1? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Alder Kubo.
Yes.
Alder Ferraro Santana.
Yes.
Alder Morrison.
Yes.
Alder Marchand.
Yes.
Alder Furlow.
Yes.
Alder Sabin.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Item 1 passes favorably. Further motions, or Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move item 2.
Second.
Item 2 has been moved and it has been seconded. Discussion on item 2. Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think the goal of this ordinance is really important, and I support it. We want landlords to be reachable so they can be held accountable for problems that arise in their properties. And too often we've had residents living under blighted conditions. We've had city staff frustrated because they have not been able to determine the proper chain of custody or chain of ownership. And we need to be able to reach people who can do something when a repair or an issue needs to be addressed. And so I strongly support this attempt to close some loopholes that have proved to be very frustrating for enforcement efforts. I do think it'll be important for us to make sure that the questions we've asked directed towards the Corporation Council get sent to the Corporation Council so we can get some follow-up between now and the second reading. But I think this is part of a series of efforts that the city is taking to try to address the other side of affordable housing crisis, which is too much of the existing housing that is quote unquote affordable is not wholesome or decent to live in. And we need to make sure that our existing housing stock is kept in good repair. So I encourage colleagues to vote yes and give this a favorable recommendation to the full board. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Further discussion, Alder Morrison.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I stand in support of this item. I am happy to be a part of a legislative process that continues to look at policies, ordinance, laws that will enhance good living in our communities. As my colleague from the 26th Ward just noted, that it is so important to be able to get in contact with these landlords because things happen. Things happen overnight, emergencies happen. And if you own a home, you are responsible for that home and for those people in that home. And as a legislative body, we are responsible for the members of the residents of this city. And so I'm happy to vote in favor of this ordinance because it's yet another tool for the enforcement tool belt so we can ensure communal living for all residents of New Haven. So thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alderman Morrison. Further discussion on item 2. I likewise am in favor of item 2. As somebody who spends quite a bit of time in his day job tracing LLCs and ownership, it certainly is possible to do. It often does require a lot of time, a lot of energy, a lot of effort, knowing all the right databases, knowing all the right forms to pull. And so I think that, as Alder Marchand said, being able to close a loophole by making it much easier and allowing our staff to focus their valuable time and energy on other things that they need to do in order to make the stock of existing affordable housing in our city actually livable seems like a worthwhile thing to me. So I am in favor. Further discussion on item 2. Seeing none, I will call the roll. Alder Cupo.
Yes.
Alder Ferraro Santana.
Yes.
Alder Morrison.
Yes.
Alder Marchand.
Yes.
Alder Furlow.
Yes.
Alder Sabin.
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Item 2 passes favorably. Further motions, Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that we read and file item 3.
Second.
There's been a motion that item 3 be read and filed. Discussion. Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move that it be read and filed because that's the appropriate motion for this. I think we would need to take additional actions to follow up with policies, but I just want to state for the record that I'm grateful for the work of the city staff and the residents who are members of the commission. It was too bad we didn't get to see more of them this evening, but I'm sure we will in meetings in the future. And I think that the recommendations have a lot of merit and warrant consideration by this board and follow-up actions that are appropriate. So I want to thank them and encourage colleagues to support the recommendation that it be read and filed. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Marchand. Further discussion, Alder Morrison.
I too would just like to publicly say thank you to the commission for all the work that they've put into this process. As we all know, data is the component that is necessary in order to gain the dollars and that we need in order to go the next step. And by them doing this deep dive work and providing us with these different recommendations, I hope to see someone take one of these recommendations or each one of these recommendations and build them out so we can really be able to see affordable housing truly happen throughout our city. I'm proud to be able to say that last week we voted for one of the first pieces of this affordable housing, these affordable housing recommendations, which I hope to see that number, that percentage number increase. I'll continue to say it until the end of time. And so again, I thank them for this, for the work, and I too agree to read and file the document. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Morrison. Alder Marchand, do you have another comment? Your virtual hand is still up? No? Okay. Any further discussion, pardon me, on item 3? I, of course, also agree that we should read and file this as the appropriate action. And I also thank the members of our Affordable Housing Commission who did show up tonight. I believe strongly, as Ms. Jarrett said, that one of the great virtues of our Affordable Housing Commission in its construction is the way that it combines technical expertise, and real deep subject knowledge with real deep lived experience and knowledge from the community. I think that it's not, I wouldn't say it's unique in that way in our city, but it's unusual. And I think that it provides, a great deal of expertise of all sorts for that reason. And so I think that as a legislation committee and as a legislative body, the full board of alders, I think that we have our work cut out for us in the short term, the medium term, and the long term on affordable housing. And I'm glad that we have, reports such as what we heard tonight to help us along the way. Any further discussion on item 3? Seeing none, I will call the roll. Alder Pupo,
Yes.
Alder Farah Santana,
Yes.
Alder Morrison,
Yes.
Alder Marchand,
Yes.
Alder Furlow,
Yes.
Alder Sabin.
Yeah.
I vote yes as well. I didn't even read my list that time. I did it by memory, so I'm getting the new committee, in order correctly. Alder Marchand,
Good job, Mr. Chair. I move we adjourn.
Second.
there's been a motion to adjourn, which has been seconded. Any discussion? Seeing none, we'll call the roll once more. Alder Pupo,
Yes.
Alder Farah Santana,
Yes.
Alder Morrison,
Yes.
Alder Marchand,
Yes.
Alder Furlow,
Yes.
Alder Sabin,
Yes.
and I vote yes as well. We are adjourned. Thank you, colleagues.
Good night.
Have a great evening.